Three men defeated the most secure prison system in American history using nothing but stolen spoons, raincoats, and a level of genius that the FBI is still trying to wrap its head around 60 years later. This isn't just a story about a jailbreak, it is the blueprint of the single greatest disappearance act the world has ever seen. And it happened on a rock that was supposed to be inescapable. Let's set the scene because you have to understand what they were up against. Alcatraz wasn't just a prison, it was a psychological weapon designed by the federal government. It sat 1.25 miles off the coast of San Francisco, surrounded by water so cold it would shut down your organs in minutes. The currents were like underwater tornadoes that would drag you out to the Pacific Ocean before you could even take a breath. The guards had orders to shoot to kill. For 29 years, this place held the worst of the worst. We are talking about Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, the guys who ran criminal empires. The government built this place to be the end of the line. If you got sent to Alcatraz, you weren't coming back. But then came Frank Morris. This guy wasn't your average thug. He was an orphan who had bounced around the system his whole life. But he had an IQ of 133. That put him in the top 2% of the entire population. He was brilliant, he was patient, and he was obsessed with freedom.
The choice is yours.
He arrived at the Rock in 1960, and almost immediately, he started looking for the cracks in the system. He teamed up with two brothers, John and Clarence Anglin. These guys were different. They were farm boys from Georgia who grew up swimming in rough waters. They were bank robbers, sure, but they used toy guns because they didn't want to hurt anyone. They were wild, athletic, and impossible to keep in a cage. They had already escaped multiple other prisons, which is exactly why they got sent to Alcatraz. The system thought putting them all in one place would stop them. Instead, it gave them the perfect team. Here is where it gets absolutely insane. The plan they came up with sounds like fiction, but it is 100% real. The cells at Alcatraz were tiny, but they had these small ventilation grills near the floor. The concrete was old and crumbly from the salt air. Morris realized that if they could widen those holes, they could get into the utility corridor behind the cells. But how do you drill through concrete when you are in a maximum security lockdown? You use spoons. They stole spoons from the mess hall. They found saw blades on the grounds. They even built a motorized drill using a broken vacuum cleaner motor. This is prison engineering at its finest. Every single night from 5:30 to 9, they would dig. To cover the noise, Morris would play his accordion. The guards just thought he was practicing his music, but really, he was providing the soundtrack to their escape. They worked for months. They swept the concrete dust into their pockets and scattered it in the yard during the day. To hide the holes in their cells, they made fake cardboard grills painted to look like the real thing. But getting out of the cell was only step one. They needed a way off the island. They turned the top of the cell block into a secret workshop. They stole 50 raincoats. 50. They cut them up, glued them together, and stitched them to create a massive rubber raft and life vests. They made paddles out of scrap wood. They even used the accordion as a pump to inflate the raft. But the most genius part? The dummy heads. They knew the guards did bed checks all night. If they were gone, the alarm would sound in minutes. So, they made fake heads. They used soap, toilet paper, and concrete dust to sculpt faces. They painted them to look like skin. They went to the prison barbershop and collected real human hair to glue onto the skulls. They nicknamed them Oink and Oscar. These things were so realistic that from the hallway, in the dark, you couldn't tell the difference. June 11th, 1962, the night of the attempt.
My God.
Morris and the Anglin brothers slide through their holes. But there was a fourth man, Alan West. He was part of the plot, but the concrete around his vent had hardened. He got stuck. He couldn't get out. Morris and the others tried to help him, but the clock was ticking. They had to make a brutal choice. They left him behind. Morris and the Anglins climbed the pipes to the roof. They slid down a 50-foot smokestack. They scaled two 12-foot barbed wire fences. They made it to the water's edge. They inflated their raincoat raft, pushed off into the freezing bay, and vanished into the darkness. Alan West eventually got out, but it was too late. He went back to his cell and later told the FBI everything. The next morning, the guards tried to wake up the prisoners. They poked the heads, and the heads rolled off the pillows. That is when panic set in. The siren wailed. The biggest manhunt in history started. The FBI spent 17 years looking for them. They found a packet of letters wrapped in rubber floating in the water. They found a homemade life vest, but they never found a single body. The official story is that they drowned. The FBI says the water was too cold, the currents too strong. They closed the case in 1979, saying the men were dead. But the family tells a different story. The Anglin family claims the brothers survived. They say their mother received roses every year for years after the escape, signed by John and Clarence. They say a brother, Robert, was in contact with them until the late 80s. And then, in 2015, a photo surfaced. It was allegedly taken in Brazil in 1975. It shows two men standing by a termite mound, and they look exactly like older versions of John and Clarence Anglin. Then, in 2013, the San Francisco police received a letter. It was written by someone claiming to be John Anglin. The letter said, "Yes, we all made it that night, but barely." The writer claimed Frank Morris died in 2008 and Clarence died in 2011. The writer said he was 83 years old and had cancer. He offered to turn himself in for medical treatment and 1 year of jail time. The FBI analyzed the handwriting, but they couldn't confirm if it was real or fake. Think about the timeline. Alcatraz closed less than a year after the escape. The government claimed it was because of budget issues, but everyone knew the truth. The prison that couldn't be beaten had been beaten. The legend was broken. Modern science has even backed up the escapees. Dutch scientists used computer models to simulate the currents on that specific night in 1962. They found that if the men left at the exact right time and paddled toward Angel Island, they absolutely could have made it to shore. So, where are they? The U.S. Marshals still have active warrants for their arrest. They will keep looking until the men turn 100 years old. The case is technically still open. Did they drown in the cold, dark water? Or did they pull off the impossible and live out their lives in South America? This isn't just a story about escaping a prison. It's a story about human will. It's about three guys who looked at the most formidable fortress in the world and decided they were smarter than the concrete and the steel. Whether they lived or died, they became ghosts. They beat the rock. And somewhere in a classified file or a family album in Brazil, the truth is still waiting to be found.
A vault of secrets most will never find.
Unlock the hidden treasures. Vex Vault. Subscribe and hit the bell.